Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. The latest political flashpoint in the COVID-19 pandemic is an announcement from the Biden administration. It will seek to enforce through OSHA a vaccine mandate on businesses with more than 100 employees. Here to discuss the issue this morning are Senator Tom Sherman of Rye, who is a physician and a Democrat, and Representative Tim Lang of San Bernardino, a driving force in the legislature against vaccine mandates, and he is a Republican. And before we jump in, we should start by pointing out a very basic truth that is not up for debate. Vaccination provides a benefit to society and successfully controlled or eliminated several deadly diseases. And when it comes to COVID-19, right now in hospitals, the vast majority of people who are gravely ill from this pandemic virus are unvaccinated. With that aside, there is a lot of division over whether the government should be able to mandate this vaccine. Representative Lang, you're saying no. Tell us why.
So again, thank you for the conversation. This goes back to the fiat order of the President of the United States. Again, does one man sitting in office have the right to just override the entire country? When you look at New Hampshire statistics, it doesn't support the need for a mandate. We have, 1 out of 10 beds that are available or be taken up by a COVID patient, not exactly a driving force to mandate and to threaten people's livelihood. Again, this mandate says that you can lose your job if you refuse to take the vaccination, and making people lose their livelihood, be able to put food on their table for their family is just not the right thing, not the right way to go about it.
Senator Sherman, what's your perspective here? I'm assuming you back this mandate, and why do you think it's the right way to go at this point in the pandemic?
New Hampshire, if you look at the impact of vaccination on New Hampshire, we've seen an incredibly sharp drop in our caseloads of COVID since the vaccine was introduced. But starting in June, July, that curve flattened in terms of the people getting vaccinated. And in fact, we have fallen well out of the top 10 in the country for who is the numbers vaccinated. So we are plateaued at around 56%. But at the same time, the Delta virus has taken off. Our governor has refused to intervene in a meaningful way other than doing public service announcements featuring him. And as a result, we have 4,030 current cases. We have 13 new outbreaks. We have 614 new cases as of yesterday. And what this means is that we are back to where we were 8 months ago in terms of our caseloads. Wentworth Douglas Hospital was at 150% capacity. And so, I take exception to what Representative Lang is saying. We are back in crisis mode, and we have no discernible leadership. There's a vacuum where we used to be leading. If people will not take the preventive steps that we know work with this disease, as a doctor, we have to tell them they need to go ahead and do that if they're going to participate in society. And that's part of what this mandate is about. It's saying the only way we are going to get to a point where we are not people dying is to actually make sure that we reach a successful level of vaccination.
Representative Lang, this country has always been about that dynamic tension between protecting the rights of the individual and ensuring the common good. The consequences of the choice not to vaccinate, unfortunately, aren't isolated to just the individual. That choice can impinge upon the freedom of others and deprive them of health or even their life. So how do you balance that?
So thank you, Adam, for the question. Again, I think that the conversation is different. Again, so we're talking about vaccination, and in fact, the argument is around, the GOP isn't anti-vax. The GOP is anti-mandate, right? So the conversation is not around whether the governor, state leaders have all said that the vaccine is useful and it works. Again, but it goes back to the mandate. The latest out of the Surgeon General's offices, they're going to start checking to see whether or not religious exemptions are properly being used. So again, the government stepping in, they're going to force a mandate, then they're going to start telling people that their religious rights may be violated to go with it. Again, this is the problem with mandates when you force things down on individual citizens, is that the government then has to step in other ways to start managing it. Again, I think that Senator Sherman said it right. There are over 853,000 individuals who have received the vaccination in the state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire's done well. Our case fatality rate is less than 1%. Again, New Hampshire's managed this process very well. The New Hampshire citizens feel they've managed it very well. I myself, I get tested in the last 10 days or 14 days. I've been tested 10 times as part of my job. Again, I think the citizens are doing the right thing, and it's not a vaccination status that is really going to protect you as much as infection status. We know that when you're looking at the classification of unvaccinated people, vaccinated people, and people who've already had COVID, all three of those classifications are subject to getting COVID again or getting COVID. So again, I think we should be focusing on infection status and making sure that infectious people are not showing up at hospitals unless they're there for care, and even in the workplace. So again, changing the dynamic and the conversation away from the vaccination and making sure that people are taking care of themselves and making decisions that are good for them and their individual rights and individual needs, their special circumstances, is the right way to go.
Senator Sherman, how do you respond to that contention that we're heading down a dangerous path if the government is mandating a medical procedure for folks? You would agree that, you know, the government shouldn't be talking to telling people what to do about abortion, but in this case, they do have the right to say something.
Yes, and in fact, it's interesting that the same people who are saying that the government shouldn't be involved in something that will save lives is saying, well, we should be telling people that they need an unnecessary transvaginal ultrasound. It's the exact same people who have this split personality in where they believe the government should be involved. So just to correct what Representative Lang just said, first of all, we know the vaccine works. Not 100% curative, of course, not 100% protective, but certainly decreases disease severity, decreases mortality. I would like to just pivot to reminding people what it was like just less than a year ago when we had remote learning. Parents were screaming about the fact that their kids were at home. They weren't in schools. Our businesses were closed. That's where we're headed. We are now at a caseload that is the same as February. We are now moving towards filling our hospitals. We've seen it today in Idaho. They're talking about rationing hospital care because they have the lowest vaccination rate. We are not seeing people take what I call individual responsibility, which is the hallmark of the New Hampshire way. It's the hallmark of what New Hampshire stands for, is understanding that if we take individual responsibility for our community and for our state and for the people of our state with COVID, getting the vaccine, we can actually save lives individually. We can save the lives of our children, our families, our friends, our community, and state residents. But it's not happening. And there's no leadership saying, let's go do this. Let's all get together. Let's heal the state. That's what we do as doctors. That's what I'm used to trying to do as a physician. And I'd like to see that same leadership coming from the state leaders, but it's not. And that loss of life, that loss of health, that return to remote learning and closure of classrooms, and that closure of our economy is going to be on Republican leadership, starting with Governor Sununu and extending all the way through the Executive Council, who blocked $22 million in funding for vaccinations, to the state Senate and to the state House, because they are saying, no, we are not going to use all the tools at our disposal to keep New Hampshire open, to keep New Hampshire healthy, and to keep New Hampshire residents alive. They're saying no.
Representative Lang, I've got other questions, but I'll let you respond there. There was a lot there.
So again, thank you, Adam. Again, I'm going to go back to hospitalizations because it's an easy metric to measure, right? So again, as Senator Sherman and Tom is talking about here, he's talking about the hospitals being full of COVID patients, but the reality is, according to the HHS public data website, 118 beds are in use by New Hampshire citizens in our hospitals. There are 3,030 beds available in the state of New Hampshire. So again, 118 COVID cases for 3,000 beds in New Hampshire. When you talk about ICU, again, we're in the same general mark. It's again, if I remember my numbers right, there are about 300 beds, of which about 30 or less are being in use by ICU patients that have COVID. So you could invert that conversation and say 9 out of 10 beds are being used by people without COVID. So again, this is the discussion around how media and how it's being reported is getting thrown out of disproportion. It's making people be more resistant because we're not telling the truth in a way that's equal. We're sensationalizing the data, and it's again causing distrust. And I'll just speak real quick to the transvaginal ultrasound. So the same senator who's saying they shouldn't be doing that, but we should be injecting people with the injection. So again, it's an inverted conversation depending on how you want to position it.
All right, we've got about a minute left. Senator Sherman, why don't you take 30 seconds, sir?
Well, the difference is that the injection is medically indicated. The transvaginal ultrasound, of course, is not. It's the state Senate, the state legislature, and the governor telling women that even though it's not medically indicated to have a transvaginal ultrasound, they must do it. And that's ridiculous and it's cruel. On the vaccine side, we know it works. It's medically indicated, and it is our pathway to holding on to our economy, holding on to our health, and almost most importantly, keeping our kids in school. Does every place in the state of New Hampshire need a vaccine mandate? No. But is it an important tool, an important arrow in our quiver to making sure that we can continue to stay open, thriving, and strong? Absolutely.
All right, Senator Sherman and Representative Lang, thank you for this discussion today on Close Up. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Adam.